Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
It was the first time in 40 years that a British Prime Minister had been absent from a European Union summit. This was a meeting of the leaders of the 27 states who will be left in the EU once Brexit is completed. And they were determined that Britain should not be rewarded for its vote. But Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was in town seeking to achieve a separate deal for her country in the new arrangements. Matt Fry is in Brussels tonight. Matt.
Well, John, David Cameron did indeed enjoy his last supper here last night. On the menu, in case you ask, quail and veal tenderloin. But I have to say the atmosphere was anything but tender. And by the way, no more a la carte dining for the Brits here ever. It's now a rather meagre fixed menu decided by the chefs and not by the customers. Now, his dining companions reiterated to him that Britain had run out of special deals, and if Britain wanted access to the single market, it would indeed have to pay into the EU coffers and continue opening its doors to EU migrants. He also told them that if they wanted to save Europe, they would have to fix immigration. On that note, the Prime Minister flew out of town, and the 27 remaining members woke up this morning for a breakfast meeting to talk about Britain for the first time without Britain at the table. As for any thoughts or plans about reversing the referendum decision, well, Angela Merkel called it wishful thinking. It's that moment at the party when the killjoy has left the others to have some fun. David Cameron has gone home, leaving them to talk about him behind his back. Britain is no longer cramping their style. The remaining 27 have taken an exit from Brexit, for now at least, and all the woes that Britain has come to represent here. To be honest, I haven't seen these people look this happy for a very long time. In the bespoke television studio in the European Parliament just down the road, they're about to tear down the digital subjects of their recent nightmares. Think of it like getting over a bad relationship and moving on from your ex. Although the terms of separation still need to be thrashed out. And Europe is holding all the cards.
Leaders made it crystal clear today that access to the single market requires acceptance of all four freedoms, including the freedom of movement. There will be no single market à la carte.
As David Cameron, the ex, left through one door on the dead of night, a new possible date entered through another, bright and early. What are you doing in Brussels today?
I'm here today trying to make Scotland's voice heard. This is an initial series of meetings really in Brussels, the purpose of which is to promote an understanding here that Scotland voted differently to the UK in the referendum last week, and that we aspire to a different outcome. So it's very initial, very exploratory, and just making sure that Scotland's case is being heard here.
Does this also involve assurances from Brussels that if you were to vote for independence again,
We're not at that stage.
there would be a fast-track membership?
We're not at that stage, and I've made very clear in Scotland that my starting point in these discussions is not independence. My starting point is how do we protect Scotland's place in the European Union.
And since we're on the bizarre new normals spawned by Brexit, including the Labour leadership vacuum, this parting shot on the SNP at Westminster.
Well, we would be, I think, in a much stronger position perhaps in the Labour Party just now to form an effective shadow cabinet.
You're serious about that?
Look, the SNP since the general election has been the effective opposition in the House of Commons, and I think that gets more and more the case with every day that passes just now.
Next we bump into Martin Schulz, the powerful president of the European Parliament, who just spent quality time with Ms Sturgeon. More on the photobomber in a minute.
I listened and learned.
Did you give her assurances that if there was to be another... Did you give her assurances that if there was to be another referendum, and if they were to vote for independence, there would be easier membership of the EU?
I had a meeting with Ms Sturgeon as the First Minister of Scotland. I listened very carefully to her, and that was all. Thank you very much.
As for the photobomber, a Scottish MEP from UKIP, determined to spoil any flirtation between Nicola Sturgeon and the EU. But to be clear, as a Scottish MEP for UKIP, you will try everything you can to scupper any kind of backdoor deals about Scottish
I
independence.
most certainly will. The majority of Scots, when it comes to it, they voted to stay in the UK. And if it comes to being in the European Union or staying with the UK, I can assure you the Scots will plump for the UK.
Britain out, Europe upside down. It's all too much. What's really needed is some Eastern serenity. Luckily, the Buddhists were on hand in the square outside to channel keep calm and carry on. I have to say that the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy and indeed the French President François Hollande put the kibosh onto Nicola Sturgeon's plans for any sort of separate negotiations and deals done with the EU. The Spanish are very worried about Catalonia, and they said there will be nothing separate with the Scots. When Britain goes, so does Scotland.